to the A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. I am Charlie Burris. That is Zach Reagan. Wherever you listen throughout the world, we thank you so very much for tuning in to our show here. We talk everything Vols every week on the Big Orange Podcast. If you want to listen to that on the reg, go over to the A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed on Apple or Spotify. When you get there, rate, review. You got to subscribe. And if you do subscribe, you won't miss our shows when we drop them on Monday. Speaking of Mondays, it is 1 right now at 6 p.m. Eastern time, and that means we're live on YouTube. You got to go to the A to Z Sports Tennessee Volunteers YouTube channel. Not only will you get this show live when we record it, you'll get Lucas Panzica's explainer videos, the clips from this show, the game day show that I do with Jonathan Crompton. It's all there. It's amazing. So go subscribe and hang out with us. If you hit that notification bell there, also, you'll be notified when we go live. You can be a part of the show. Come comment, hang out with us. At Charlie_Burris, at TNT, at A to Z Sports, Facebook.com/A to Z Sports Nashville, and A to Z Sports.com for all the stuff that Zach writes on the internet. Whole lot to talk about. As always, never a dull week in Tennessee sports. Really getting into the swing of SEC basketball and watching all of that. But I don't know why. Maybe it's because Tennessee lost in the playoff of, the college football playoff. I cannot muster up a single crap to give about the NFL playoffs. I don't know what it is. I got nothing. There's not a compelling team. They were all blowouts, and it's just not a compelling team left in the thing. I'm tired of the Chiefs. I'm just, I can't do it. And so the only thing left for me in football, I think, is that national championship. I'm just not feeling it. I guess you got to write about it a little bit more. So you don't have a choice, maybe.
I think it's the best game was Washington and Tampa last night by far. It was the only real compelling close game that was intriguing to watch. Jaden Daniels, really impressive. But I think the biggest takeaway for the from the first weekend is the Bengals should have been in. I mean, all those blowouts, the Bengals should have been in the playoff, right? I mean, the committee messed up, and you got to put Joe Burrow in there. We know that they're better than the Texans and the Chargers, maybe the Texans. I don't know. Some of these other teams that lost. So
the committee screwed this one so badly. How dare they leave out the Bengals? It's disgusting. I won't stand for it.
All kidding aside, that the narrative around blowouts because of the NFL playoff, how that first round of college games went, has kind of shifted the nature of that conversation a bit, which is good for Tennessee because Tennessee was blown out by the team that's probably going to win the national championship. Maybe Notre Dame pulls it off. We'll see, but they probably got blown. Had the toughest game of anyone in the entire playoff, playing at Ohio State in the very cold weather on the road like that. That was as tough as any game that could have been played in that playoff. So maybe Vols fans feel a little vindicated for the performance that Tennessee put on in that playoff, knowing that they played against the best team in this playoff in the toughest environment.
Vindicated while still feeling
annoyed that was the matchup. Yeah.
Yes, because Tennessee should have been Penn State, where you played SMU in the first round, and I think you would have played Georgia, and you would have played them on a neutral field. And would it have been, I don't know which bowl game that would have been, but it wouldn't have been Atlanta. The national championship's in Atlanta, so that, it's not like it would have been just a home game for Georgia that way. And of course, Tennessee, every time something happens to them where they get screwed so badly that the rules have to change. Here, just add this one to the list. Always a great time every time that happens. But that's not what the show is going to be about tonight. Tons of stuff happen. Recruiting, transfer portal, and everything that's happening there or not happening there. And then, the biggest news that we're going to start the show off with, at least, probably the biggest recruit to commit to Tennessee, and let's say since 1997. Mike Keith is coming to be the voice of the Vols. I could not be more excited, and not just for football, but for basketball too. And we got to start off the show with just a session of me raining as much praise as I could possibly give to anyone in almost any profession. Mike Keith is one of my favorite figures in all of sports media, and he's going to be the voice of the Vols now. It's absolutely incredible. And we're going to finish up with basketball, and it's going to be a great time. So we appreciate everybody for watching. Let's get into it right after I tell you about the good folks at Zen Sports. Zen Sports just picked yet another grand prize winner. This time, it was the December Big Game Sweepstakes, but now they're rolling out the VIP Players Club Sweepstakes in January. And these prizes, they are taken to an entire other level. One grand prize winner will win a $10,000 bonus bet on the NFL Big Game in February and $10,000 cash, or an alternative of $15,000 cash. It's crazy. You have the ability to earn entries on every bet you place on Zen Sports in January and every dollar that you wager. Plus, earn 10 times the entries on all parlay bets. It doesn't get better than this. And if you don't win the grand prize, don't worry. There's also 5 smaller prizes. They grant you either a $1,000 bonus bet or on the NFL Big Game, or $250 cash. Also, for all new customers who sign up with the code A2ZTN, that is ATOZTN, you receive 500 entries in addition to the entries that you earned from the value of your qualifying bets. What are you waiting for? Head to zensports.com/sweepstakes for all the rules. And you can also earn that $100 no danger first wager that we've talked to you about all season. Zen Sports betting just got better. Go download it right now. If you have a gambling problem, 1-800-889-9789. No danger. First wager limited. Plus $500. Qualifying terms and conditions apply. Qualifying wager for a wager entry must have minimum odds for any leg in the entry of -250 American odds. For clarity, a wager of -251 does not qualify. A qualifying wager for a wager entry must be made a minimum amount of $5. Head to zensports.com/sweepstakes for contest terms and conditions. Must be 21 or older in Tennessee to bet. Zen Sports, guys. We got to work on the length of those.
Yeah, that was lengthy.
It's qualifying. I mean, we got to do it. It is what it is. But there you go. Seriously, do go download it. Zen Sports, great people. All righty. The biggest news of this entire week, man. Mike Heath becoming the voice of the Vols, taking over for Bob Kessling. And I don't want any of this to be like too much of a reflection on Bob Kessling. I think if you've listened to this show at length, we've kind of aired it out. I appreciate everything that Bob has done, but he's always been, what's the right word? There's been some to be desired on the calls that he's made in big moments. You're what a turn of events for the Hail Mary against Georgia. And just, some of these things where you just went, Bob, you're seeing some of the great moments in college sports. A little life, buddy. Come on. But at the end of the day, he is a Tennessee legend, and he goes down, and he'll be Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame, all of these things, a stalwart of this community for so long. And we thank him for that, but he will be replaced by a guy who was influential in me just becoming a media person for the time that I did it full time. And one of the reasons that I still do this now. He's one of the best to ever do it. I mean, this gets overused when you call somebody the greatest of all time. But I mean, Mike Keith is the greatest of all time to call Titans football because he's the only guy to ever do it. But also, I mean, he is just genuinely one of the greatest to ever be on the radio. I mean, everybody knows, if you know Mike Keith at all, the signature call. What is it, Zach? Go ahead and fill. I mean, you don't have to do it, but his call.
Yeah, I think Eric's got us here in the comments there.
Oh, there it is, Eric. I wasn't looking at the comments. There it is, right there, Zach. I mean, it's one of the great signature things that anybody in sports media does, and he's a Tennessee alum. He's a Tennessee guy. Grew up a huge Tennessee fan. Calls Tennessee baseball, grows up in the industry with John Ward, calls Tennessee baseball, leaves for the Titans because, I mean, what an opportunity that was. And then is a legend with the Titans automatically. The day it was announced he was leaving, the Titans also announced that he's going into the Ring of Honor and all that stuff. I mean, he's just so amazing. Oh, truly, this is an incredible development. What do you think about this one, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's what every Tennessee fan wanted as soon as we heard the news about Bob Kessling. I mean, even before the news about Bob Kessling, we've been talking about
We've been
begging
talking
Mike
about
Keith
it.
to come, yeah, for like a decade or longer. The fact that Eric mentioned in the comments, like it's only been available twice in his lifetime. Of course, he's going to take it. Like in retrospect, that makes so much sense. That of course, why would he not take it, knowing how much this job means to him? But I think just as Tennessee fans, you don't expect something like that great to happen. To like what you've been wanting to happen for years and years and years to actually happen. We heard rumblings, rumors and stuff. Pretty solid stuff like a month or so ago, maybe back before that, that this might happen. There was a good chance it was going to happen. We weren't sure what it would look like. We were, was he going to be doing just Tennessee football? Would he still be doing Titans games? I mean, that would be quite a challenge because you just don't know how the schedule is going to line up. If the Titans are in, Los Angeles on a Sunday and Tennessee's playing, in Knoxville or Gainesville or Athens on a Saturday, wherever they might be, that's tough. And to do both jobs the way you want to do it, especially doing radio, which is so much different than TV. I feel like there's just so much more detail that goes into that job. That would have been tough to pull off, but it makes sense that he's coming back to be all in on Tennessee athletics, doing basketball, doing football. Obviously, I think we're going to see a lot more digital media type stuff, studio type stuff, and I'm really excited to see where that goes. How Mike can, I don't know, what he does with some of the athletes, some of the spotlight they'll put on some of the players. I think we'll get some really unique content, some fun content out of this, and it's exciting. It's something Tennessee's been missing for a long time. There's been a lot of great SEC radio announcers, and since John Ward left, as like we touched on it with Bob Kessling, he's meant everything to Tennessee. He is a VFL through and through, but that the energy in his voice, just the electricity of some of those calls, I mean, that's tough. Not just anyone can do that, right? I mean, it's like you can just be like, hey Bob, be more dynamic on the radio, and you can just flip a switch and do it. I mean, that's a really tough job. Some people have it, and some people just, some people have it like Mike Keith and John Wards and some of these other great announcers, and some people don't. And you'll get to hear, the highlights on a Sunday morning after Tennessee's beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa or something, and you get to hear Mike Keith, hopefully calling an exciting moment, and that's on the highlight then instead of maybe the ESPN call or Kessling's call. I mean, just little things like that, I think, is something that Tennessee's really been missing. And happy for him, happy for Tennessee fans. It's a win-win. Perfect time too, right? Like Titans are, I don't know where they're going right now. I don't think anyone knows.
The abyss.
I'm not a Titans fan, but hopefully for them, something good comes out of this transition that they're going through now, and maybe hitting kind of rock bottom. They can spring out of this. It happened for Tennessee football, but a few years ago. But the Vols obviously are trending up, so it's the perfect time for Mike Keith to come back, because if he comes back in 2017, 2018, 19, 20, the Pruitt era or something, I don't know. It wouldn't have been quite the same as it is now, where Tennessee's in the limelight. They're in the playoff. It's a good time for him to come back. I'm glad it worked out this way.
It's the absolute dream. It is like, take your pick. When Michigan got Harbaugh, or when whatever, when Urban Meyer came back to Ohio State, like just some of those where you went like, oh, that's the dream guy. Yeah, of course we would love to try to get him, but there's no way that whatever it would be. And it actually happened. Of course, he's not a coach. He's not going to have a ton of weight on the outcome of these sporting events for Tennessee, but he can just make these things so much more special. Like, I still go back and I listen to the Music City Miracle, because it's one of the great sports calls ever. It's so just legendary. And now, you have everything going correct with Tennessee sports. It's so perfect for him to step in at this moment. And then you obviously John Wilkerson, a legend in his own right, calling baseball, and his calls now becoming legendary with the baseball team winning national championships and things. And it just, I mean, God, we obviously with A to Z Sports, one of their main drivers is Titans coverage, because they're based out of Nashville. And we talked to Titans guys, and there were, as you mentioned, there were rumors beforehand of, oh, well, we're hearing things with Mike in Tennessee, but we're not really sure. It might be that he splits time with the Titans, and with Tennessee was somewhat we heard. And I just went like, that would be cool, but this needs to be. It would just be so great to just have Mike finally be the guy for Tennessee. It almost, it doesn't right or wrong, because I think like Bob wasn't a wrong. He was the heir apparent in that moment after Mike Keith left. I mean, he was the absolute natural choice in that time. But I think just so many Tennessee fans felt like, if only Mike Keith, like, he should be calling our games, not the Titans games, all of that time. I felt that way. And I'm a huge Titans fan, or was, about nothing really to be a fan of at the moment. But, it just is, it's so perfect. It's so ideal. Everything about it is just absolutely incredible. And I can't stop gushing about it. Like, thinking about that moment in that Syracuse game when that first sack happens. Oh, I'm gonna cry. I'm getting chills thinking about it. It's gonna just be so good, man. Like I don't even know. I texted this to some friends last night, or what was it, Saturday night. Darlinstone Dubar makes that crazy three at the end of the Texas game. He's chirping at the crowd and stuff. Like, just think. I mean, Mike Keith has never called basketball, but think what that call is going to be like in that moment. Something like that. If Mike Keith was on the call there, just, oh my gosh, I can barely contain myself. It's just so awesome.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun, and you hate that maybe you didn't get to hear him do some of these calls the last couple of years. I think that's the only thing that would have made it better. Maybe if it would have been back in like 2022, but it's been a long time since John Ward, and the fact that he was with John Ward, came up with John Ward. I mean, that's a huge part of who he is as an announcer. But you're not going to really be directly compared, I don't think, because there's just so much time in between. I mean, there's just so much about it that feels natural. I mean, he's going to be, Mike Keith is obviously he's improved. Anybody gets better and better and better at the job they're doing, right? He's been doing football for so long now. It's second nature to him. The way he's going to be able to step into the booth and do these SEC games, that's just, I mean, a pro's pro, right? I mean, it just doesn't get any better than that. It's at the highest level. And for me personally, I think college radio play-by-play, I mean, I know the NFL is keen, right? I mean, that's what everybody's goal is, and everything as a player, coach, analyst, TV is usually to get to the NFL. But I feel like these jobs are more prestigious because there's just such a connection with the fan base. I mean, something about college and the play-by-play guy, that's a deep connection that fans hold on to, that's so important. I just, it's that tradition, prestige, if that makes sense. I mean, so for me, it's not, I don't know, it's not even a lateral move. To me, it's like a step up, because you get to go be the voice of the Vols. I mean, the voice of, a prestigious program that's historic. And again, just happy for him and happy for the Tennessee fan base. It's fun. It was kind of unexpected when the news dropped that morning. And, it was on the radar, of course, like we said, but that was just kind of out of nowhere. After the season had ended, you've got that tough loss to Ohio State. Everybody's still kind of down about that, the way the season ended. Then you're like, oh, this is awesome. Like, you get this kind of offseason news. It's like getting a 5-star recruit times 10. It was kind of that kind of excitement that I think everyone felt whenever we heard the official news that Mike was coming back. And then his comments about, I mentioned that 2022 Alabama game a minute ago. He talked to VolQuest and on 104.5 The Zone that was the moment, the game where he kind of felt the call to come back. So that's pretty cool that game, obviously one of the biggest wins in Tennessee's for the last 20 years, was kind of what drew him back in. That game's been meaningful for a lot of Tennessee fans, and obviously was for Mike Keith as well.
Yeah, that was so great to hear him say that, because it kind of confirmed to me what you were saying. It's a step up. Like, truly, it's obviously more meaningful to him just when you hear him talk about it, and things like the Titans are obviously extremely meaningful to him. But
yeah, of course,
at
at the end of the day, there are things here that you cannot replicate in the NFL, and especially now with the Titans. At a stadium that, unless the Titans are just having a magical year where they're first in the AFC, that place is getting taken over by opposing fans. It's like Vanderbilt football in there. And again, I say this as somebody who unfortunately has been a Titans fan since they showed up in Tennessee. Like that, it just is what it is. And you look at what happens in Tennessee, like nobody's coming in and taking over Neyland Stadium, and you have the tradition and prestige and everything that comes along with college football that makes it so special. And just to hear him say specifically, it was seeing the students and everybody go crazy that Senate that made this a no-brainer to me. Kyle asked, who do you think the color commentator will be? Well, Pat Ryan makes a lot of sense because that was the original duo with the Titans. So unless Pat's also retiring, I feel like that makes the most sense. But maybe I don't even know where you'd go necessarily outside of Pat Ryan. I wouldn't have tabbed him to be the guy before. Like, I wouldn't have thought like, oh yeah, he's going to be the natural successor to Tim Priest. So, Lord knows if it's not him. But I don't know if you have any ideas
not
there.
really. I think that's so dependent on what Mike Keith wants and the chemistry in the booth. That's obviously pretty important, and I think he'll have a huge say in that, of course. I wouldn't. There's so many names you've seen thrown out already for that, and some of them make sense, some of them don't. Some of them are just like former players or people that are in radio. It just depends on what works for Mike Keith, I think. Beyond that, he's gonna have to get reaccustomed to being in a press box that is 6 miles in the air at Neyland Stadium, as opposed to the Titans press box, where you're much closer to the action, which is a kind of a weird thing to get used to after being, I'm sure, in Nissan Stadium for half the season for the last 25 years. And most NFL stadiums are like that, where they're closer to the field.
So Pat Ryan is 70. So maybe it's him.
So is Rick Barnes. And
that's true. That's a good point. That's actually a really good point. Yeah. So that's who I would expect for basketball, because you've heard Bert Bertelkamp is he is also older, and that I'm sure his retirement could be right around the corner too. Mike Keith and Bert Bertelkamp together, that's so much energy on a sideline that Bert Bertelkamp I could not love more. And I actually really I've always liked Bob Kessling's calls for basketball a lot more. I think he's better at it in general. I think he has a little more energy for basketball, and then being accompanied by Bert Bertelkamp makes their duo with Bob is kind of the straight man, and Bert is the going crazy guy. I always thought that it was awesome. Tim Priest was pretty close to that too. He had some awesome calls, but I don't know. I will put it this way: I don't care who it is, because you have the legend of all legends already as the lead commentator. So I'll
like
take
I
it.
said earlier, if Mike Keith is involved, it's going to be a professional. It's going to be elite, for lack of a better word. They'll make the right choice.
Yes, they definitely will. Kyle says he saw names thrown around today. Ramon Foster, friend of the show. Ramon Foster. He does do sideline for the Titans. Titans just gonna lose absolutely everybody.
Yeah, I don't know if Ramon's. He's pretty settled in Nashville. I think his kids play a lot of youth sports and stuff, and he's pretty involved in that. So that would be that might be a bit much for him. But I do love Ramon. He's been on the podcast a few times, and he would be fun for sure.
And then Kyle also threw out Charles Davis. Doesn't Charles Davis? I feel like he's
on CBS now, though. He's got a pretty big gig.
Yes, I bet he makes a pretty penny with CBS. Yeah. That Tennessee probably could match, but I don't know that they would want to.
I think he might like the NFL life too. That's like I said earlier. That's usually the goal, right? Is to get to the NFL, and he's on TV, one of their top broadcasting duos. He,
excuse me. Yes, he definitely is. Charles Davis, amazing in his own right. Like that would be really, really cool. I think Ramon will be great. I hadn't heard that suggestion, but
sometimes they'll offensive linemen, defense. I mean, they just have such a different view of the game, which is helpful because no matter how long you watch football, I think you at times you fall into watching the ball, right? I mean, you can be the ball watcher, and you're missing a lot of what's going on at times. And those offensive linemen, their eyes are always in the trenches, and they pick up on a lot of things that fans. I mean, you can only see so much during a play. They pick up on a lot of things that fans miss at times. So they do have some unique and interesting insight to offer.
Well, as far as it goes with football, I mean, I could heap praise on Mike Keith all day long for days.
You have been for a few days.
I have been. That's absolutely true. I mean, just that announcement. I mean, I said I'm gonna weep when he makes that first call of a sack against Syracuse. I mean, I already feel like shedding tears now because it just makes me so dang happy.
Hopefully, speaking of Syracuse, first game on the schedule, no Kyle McCord. He's going to the NFL, so that makes that game a little more manageable. He had a heck of a season last year at Syracuse. Some thought he played better than the quarterback that replaced him at Ohio State. So it's if you're Tennessee, you're not upset to see him going off to the NFL and Syracuse breaking in a new quarterback in the first game of the year. And I think they're going to have an open competition type deal. They got a transfer from LSU, a redshirt freshman, a true freshman. So it's kind of up in the air who they'll have out there that first game. So hopefully they get sacked early in the game. We get to hear that call pretty quick from Mike Keith.
Oh, man. I can't wait. It's going to be great. But there has been news around Tennessee football. Actually, Kyle with the great comments so far. He's bringing up one that I do want to talk about. Penn State lost its defensive coordinator. That's obviously where Tim Banks came from. We'll talk about that in 1 second. But otherwise, in recruiting news, you had 2026 offensive tackle Gabriel Osinda commits to Tennessee. I would say a needed position. This one, it's not sending me over the moon. I mean, he's not like the number one guy in the class, but it's a nice pickup because it's just somebody you're gonna need in the future. Go ahead.
He's a big kid. I mean, he's what, 6'7", and I think his recruiting ranking, he's just a 3-star, not like super highly rated guy like you're alluding to, but I think we could see that ranking increase a bit because Georgia kind of got in on this guy. They offered him after he made his visit, which I think is always important. They saw him in person. He took an unofficial visit to Georgia, ironically, for the Tennessee game this past November. Then they offered him. I think that's always a good sign when a team like Georgia sees you in person, then offers you. Ohio State offered him as well recently. So maybe this is one that's like trending up and you got in at the right time and he ends up being a 4-star player. Who knows? But that could be one that a really good evaluation by Tennessee. Let's hope. We were talking about that last week, that they need to evaluate the offensive linemen better, that could have been some of Glenn Ellerby's problem, is that they didn't target maybe guys that really could play in the SEC where they had come from UCF and been around. And maybe they're turning the corner on this. We'll see how it turns out. Obviously, it's going to take a while he's a 2026 guy, so it'll be a couple years before we really know, but hopefully that's the case. I think there's reason for optimism there.
There definitely is, and hopefully it does turn out. But you're not going to know for a couple of years.
Yeah,
we'll see. But otherwise, turning to the transfer portal, I think it's kind of two things when you talk about this. You have the transfer portal where we've seen almost no movement, and some rumblings of guys visiting and some different things like that. You had, I think, since our last show, Amari Jefferson did commit to Tennessee, although during our last show it was basically assumed that he would commit to Tennessee, and we kind of talked about that, and he actually did. It's a great piece to add to that wide receiver room that is obviously pretty threadbare at the moment. So they needed him and they got him. Is a guy that they probably should have gotten the first time around, coming out of high school. He did not play at Alabama, I think.
No, he had the hip deal, which I'm not sure exactly when it happened. I know that he was on our friend Booty Bentley Talking Vols podcast recently, actually Sunday, and he mentioned that at the Alabama game last year was kind of when he first started kind of getting emotional and thinking about like I might want to go to Tennessee. And he said at that point he wasn't playing anymore, knew he was out for the year, hadn't had the surgery yet on his hip, which he's supposed to be clear in February, so no concerns there. But that was when he kind of started thinking like that. I should probably try to get back to Tennessee. But you got to credit the kid, I think, for signing at Alabama. His coach, Nick Saban, leaves 20-ish days after he signed. He didn't try to exit, out of his letter of intent because he was still in high school. He played baseball, in the spring, so he didn't enroll until later on. We see that happen all the time. I mean, you can get out of that deal. And he was like, I'm going to stick through it. I made this commitment and stuck it out for the year. So I think you got to respect that. And even knowing in October he's hurt, he could have left the program then, really. I mean, we see that happen a lot these days. It's not even uncommon like it was when Jalen Hurd did it, in 2016. But he didn't. He stayed and didn't go into the portal till after the season. Handled it all the right way. Really impressive kid. If you watch any interviews with him, he's a super impressive kid. I'm excited to see what he can do. I think he can. We'll see. He's a high 4-star guy, but I think he can definitely be a big asset for Tennessee.
Yeah, the top lineup for your wide receivers next year is really young, but I think it's also really exciting. And with Staley, Mike Matthews, Amari Jefferson, and you're going to have Brazel coming back.
Mm-hmm.
And that's good. A guy that hasn't fully lived up to the potential I think we thought he had, but that who's to say he can't reach a whole different
He's had some moments.
Yeah. I mean,
Alabama
caught the game-winning touchdown against Alabama. So I like it. I still worry a lot about depth there. If those guys go down, you're down to freshmen immediately.
It's kind of like the deal with the secondary after last season when you lost so many of those veteran guys. Then you go Slaughter and Tamarian McDonald and Wesley Walker, and it paved the way for the youth movement, and the secondary was better for the most part this season. Kind of feels like that's the deal with the wide receiver room now. You've pushed out some of those veteran players. They were great. I mean, we've Brew McCoy, Squirrel White, Caleb Webb, Chaz Nimrod, guys that were seeing some action. Nothing against those guys, but then you've got the more elite talent that now can see the field and go out there and play. Hopefully it's even better than the secondary was. I think that's definitely a lot of reason for optimism. Some unknowns, they got to go prove it, but the talent's there. You would think it's got to take a step forward.
Well, and along with the actual comings and goings of the transfer portal, you have some questions like Scott on Facebook. He says, is Bryson Easton coming back for 2025? You also haven't heard about James Pierce yet. Do you put anything on that?
Man, I don't know.
Feels so improbable that he would come back.
It does, because
that just seems crazy.
As of now, and we haven't got to the combine yet, so that always changes stuff. Combine interviews. I mean, you see these draft boards in January, and they change quite a bit by the time we get to April. And you see guys, I mean, like Darnell Wright, for example. I mean, he was like a late first-round guy this time of year, maybe in December in 2022. By the time the draft comes around, he's a top 10 pick. And that can go both ways. Now, Pierce, a year ago at this time, everybody's like, he's going to be, the top 5 pick. Some mock drafts had him as the number 1 pick. I don't know what happened. I know his numbers weren't crazy. I thought he was still a good player, and his numbers could have been even better, but Tennessee didn't play him in a lot of games early in the year. Most of his sacks came in SEC games. It's not like he was low, most of his production was in SEC games. So he's really just missing that production from like the Chattanooga, Kent State type games. There's just, I don't know, you see him now, he's like middle first round pick, 15, 16, 17 range. There's questions about his run defense. Is he going to be a good enough run defender to stay on the field, be an all 3-down defender? You don't really want to take a guy that's not a 3-down defender, I guess, early in the draft in the top 5 picks. I don't know if it would really benefit him to come back and try to boost his draft stock, because I just don't know if that's what else he would do. I don't know about that, because the way Tennessee's defense plays, it's not like you're going to move him inside to be more of a run stopper. You don't need him to do that if he comes back. It would be a big gamble. He'd be risking injury. It's just hard for me to see him coming back. But it is strange that he's delayed the announcement this long because we've seen a ton of NFL announcements over the last week or two.
Yeah, and you hear things like Carson Beck's getting $4 million to go to Miami. Who knows if that's 100% true, but that's the number that came out of that. And I mean, $4 million is 4 times as much as most guys are going to make on a rookie contract in the NFL. Like, okay, matching an NFL rookie contract, that's one offer that I could see being enticing for a lot of guys that are trying to decide. But 4 times the amount that you would get on a rookie contract is crazy. And yeah, as you said, James Pierce, he had a good season, shows tons of potential, but it wasn't the ideal, preseason. They were like, oh, he's going to be the number 1 pick. And I mean, maybe money talks. They set aside a big paycheck for him. I don't know. It still feels like it's just going to come out any day now that he's going. But
if something happens, awesome. I mean, you're taking it. You'd love to have that guy back, but I think you just kind of, as a fan, you just kind of assume that he's not going to be back next season. It's just, I don't know what the slot value is for like being drafted 15th or 16th. I'm not sure, but surely it's at least over $1 million, $2 million. I'm not sure how the rookie deals are anymore. I think they said Will Levis's contract, he was making like $950,000 a year, and he was a 2nd-round pick. And that was in comparison to the Carson Beck deal, because Beck was not going to be, a day 1 or probably even a day 2 pick at this point, especially with his injury with his elbow. He'd be silly to pass up $4 million, because even if he did get drafted, he's looking at $800,000 probably at most his first year. He's going to be getting a $4 million over 4 years. I mean, that's a no-brainer for Pierce. I don't know if that would be the difference or how that would stack up. I also don't know if you're going to pay an edge rusher $4 million. I don't know that that's the going rate. And Tennessee's not just going to be like, we'll give you whatever to come back. I mean, they have to. I mean, there's only there's limited funds. I mean, you can't pay these guys so much. You have to be smart with your money. Obviously, it'd be worth paying a pretty penny to bring him back, but I don't know if they can get in that range, if it makes sense at that position with where he'll be drafted, to try to come up with a deal that would, you would think you'd have to overpay him significantly to get him to come back. So I would think that some announcement would come pretty soon, but combine and all that stuff's coming up pretty quick. You've got to make a decision and figure out what you want to do there for James Pierce, because you got to get ready for the NFL draft if you are going, and there's not a lot of time to waste on that.
I was trying to find what a rookie contract would be for a guy taken. I mean, what we think late first?
Well, I've seen 15, 16, 17, 17th overall, somewhere in there, like Buccaneers, Falcons, those teams that have those picks in that range. That's where I've seen him in the mock drafts. I mean, of course, like we said, though, that fluctuates. Who knows what it will actually be in April when the draft happens. But for now, that's kind of where people think he'll land.
So 15th was $3 million for year 1.
Yeah, so that'd be.
So that's a little more than I was thinking.
And you're looking at a 4-year deal too, so it's probably like a $12-13 million deal over 4 years on that rookie deal, and then the 5th-year option plays in a little bit there too. So it's more than just
actually.
Okay, yeah. So it's more than just that initial first year. I mean, it's 4 years. I don't know how much that's guaranteed on these rookie deals, but
yeah,
that would be tough to match, I think.
That would be, and I think it would not be a judicious way for Tennessee to spend its money either. To be handing out
like
paychecks.
Kyle mentioned, you have Jordan Ross coming up, waiting to play. He was a number 9 overall player in the
Josh Josephs
class. Yeah, Josephs played really well.
Yeah.
Caleb Herring is still there. So you've got guys coming that can be productive edge rushers. They might not be the same freak as James Pierce. Maybe they are. I don't know. Maybe Jordan Ross. I mean, he was higher rated than James Pierce was coming out of high school. Maybe he develops into a first round talent.
Maybe. And what started this conversation was Scott's question about Bryson Eason. I mean, he was a redshirt senior, and he only ever played at Tennessee. What would the story be there for his 6th year?
Well, I think I think I've heard that he can come back, that he will be back. I think he's one of those that falls. He's like the opposite of Kamal Hadden, which I will never, ever understand how Kamal Hadden didn't have another year of eligibility. I mean, he would have this year because of the Pavia thing. It's really unfortunate the way it worked out for Kamal Hadden. He should have had another year at Tennessee. But with Eason, he redshirted twice, basically. One of them was 2020, I think, and then 2021 he redshirted. So your redshirt year is 21, and then you've got the COVID years. He would be like one of the last ones that still has a COVID year because of the way that falls.
So it's that.
Yeah.
Huh. Yep, because he was a freshman in 2020 and then redshirted as sophomore, then was a redshirt sophomore.
Yeah. So you would have to play your redshirt whatever in 2020 and then redshirt for sure in 2021 to have that extra year of eligibility going into 25 now. And Dominic Bailey might be the same way. Is he another one that's in that same situation?
Maybe that would be big for both of them to come back. I think I saw the same on Bryson Eason. But Bailey coming back would be big too. Losing
Omari Thomas.
Yeah, Amari Thomas, Omar Norman Lott. Oh, but currently the last mock draft I saw out of interior defensive lineman, Omar Norman Lott, projected the highest.
I could see that
for Tennessee at the moment. I mean he was a player for Tennessee this year for sure. It's a big loss, but yeah, any of those guys, please come back if you have the ability. We need you.
And Eason's really developed into such a, of all, it was those three guys from Whitehaven that Jeremy Pruitt signed, right? Tamari McDonald, Bryson Eason, and Martavius French. Eason's the only one that has stayed throughout that time. And McDonald stayed until his last year. I think he went to Louisville. And French is now at Colorado. I think is where he's going to play next season. So he kind of fell into that same deal too with the eligibility. But Eason's really, stuck it through all this time, all the opportunities that he's had to leave after 2020. When Pruitt left, with Heupel coming in, transfer portal, everyone's available in free agency basically after every single year. And Eason's just been kind of one of those under the radar guys that's really stuck it out. That should be a fan favorite for a long time, just for his loyalty, I think, through this new era of college football.
Yeah, 6 years with one team is close to unheard of.
Especially, it's true. You're not going to hear that very often and moving forward after this kind of last wave of COVID guys get out of here.
Yeah, it seems like the most common thing is, 3 years hop to NFL, 4 years hop to NFL, but 6 with one is, and because you'll see 4 and then they hop somewhere else for graduate. Yeah. That's common. So like I said, as many of those guys as can come back, please do it. We'll finish football talk with this. The Penn State defensive coordinator position just opened up. That guy is leaving to go to Clemson, a job that we thought Tim Banks might be looking at. And then now Tim Banks' old job is open. When he left, he was the co-DC, if I'm thinking correctly. And there was always talk when he first came to Tennessee. I remember, did he actually call plays?
He didn't. I'm pretty sure he didn't. It was Brent Pry that's at Virginia Tech now.
Yes. He's the head coach. And Tim Banks, I think, still looking probably towards head coaching. We talked last week. I mean, he's 53. And so he's, clock's ticking on him becoming a head coach if he wants to accomplish that by the time his career is over. And so his old job is there with his old coach. I mean, Franklin's been there for a really long time now. And I would guess for sure he's going to get a look after this year that Tennessee's defense had. Do you think he would really entertain that one?
And I don't know. I mean, he still hasn't signed a contract extension yet, as far as we know. With Tennessee, as of last week, he had not. That's an interesting one because, like, he was connected to Miami early, and they said Banks never really had interest in going to Miami, which I wouldn't either. Mario Cristobal seems like he makes a wrong turn monthly at this point, so I think that's a volatile situation. Clemson was always interesting just because there is some stability there, regardless of what you think of Dabo. There is some stability there. I mean, they were in the playoff. They found their way in. You go to the ACC. I wouldn't have thought it would make sense to leave for Clemson, but I could also see like how that might be attractive. Penn State, on the other hand, that's a unique one because, like you said, it's where he was before. Banks is kind of from that. He's from Detroit, that Big Ten geographic area. That might be where he's more comfortable. I don't know if that's accurate or not. It was tough to find a defensive coordinator when Heupel was initially hired because of the instability at Tennessee and Heupel's offense. They went through quite a few candidates. They heard some no's. They got real close to hiring Matt House, and thank goodness that didn't work out because he was a disaster at LSU. Yeah, he came to Tennessee because he wanted to be able to call plays. He knew that he was basically going to be the head coach of the defense. Heupel's an offensive-minded guy. He would get to go do what he wants to do exactly. So it made sense for him to make the jump, even though it was kind of an unstable situation. Now, a few years down the road, Banks has proved his worth at Tennessee. The defense has improved every single season since he's been there. Number 7 scoring defense in the country in 2024. That's with the Ohio State blowout even factored in there. I don't know. I mean, you'd be taking a gamble, I feel like, because you still got to start over, right? I mean, it's not your players. It's not the same players that you left after 2020. There might be a couple still hanging around. So you still have to go kind of
leaving.
You still have to go like instill, the really, really good player. Yeah. You still have to go instill your culture if you can. It's really James Franklin's culture, though, at the end of the day. So you got to fit into that. But maybe you're comfortable with that because you worked with him for so long. What was his relationship like with James Franklin? We don't know. I mean, Franklin's kind of a polarizing figure. But at the same time, you're going to the Big Ten where, in theory, it might be easier to have success because you've really just got Ohio State that you're worried about, that's really prolific. Michigan's kind of, I don't know what to expect from them after this season. I don't know if they're going to be any better or not under Sharon Moore. Indiana's, they don't have the elite players. Like that, Kirk Cincinnati did a really good job there and did well in the Big Ten, but they do not have the players, clearly, to compete for national championships. So you gotta like your odds if you go there to Penn State to put a great product on the field. But you're doing that at Tennessee right now. I mean, are you worried that you can't replicate that maybe with James Pierce going off to the NFL and losing an Omari Thomas, who's been a really key team leader for that defense? Is that a concern? I don't know. I would lean towards it not happening. I think he'll be back at Tennessee, but I do think the Penn State job is one that you got to kind of look at and be like, I mean, I could see it. I wouldn't be shocked if he did leave for it.
If they offered him the job, I feel like he'd take it. I'm not sure. I'm not sure he would seek it out. It's hard. I don't know. Because like you're saying, he has a pretty good situation here. But that point about the competition in the Big Ten not being as stout and you'd be able to kind of flex a little bit more there, flex more easily at Penn State, that could be valuable if you have future aspirations. Yeah. But does he go, if I have one more decent year at Tennessee, I'm definitely getting a head coaching job, so I'll just stick it out here, something like that.
I think, too, I mean, Brent Hubbs mentioned this on Ramon Kalo and Will on 104.5 The Zone 2 weeks ago, maybe, or last week. I can't remember. When he was asked about Tim Banks, it's like, yeah, he was on an expiring contract, and he got an offer, I guess, late in the season that he's never signed. I believe what Brent Hubbs' words was bothersome. It was bothersome to Banks that he never got an extension before the season, that he went in basically as kind of a lame duck coach. What message did that send? Did they not value him? How's he feel about that? He's been on the road recruiting with Heupel at times this month. So he's doing the job, which these guys are pros. They do the job until it's not their job anymore. I mean, they most of them do a really good job with that, because if you don't, I mean, it ruins your reputation pretty quickly in the business. So, I mean, you don't want to give him too much credit there, but he has been out there with Heupel doing it. Who knows what kind of conversations they've had? Has he expressed to him how important he is? I've always said for a couple of months now, the best case scenario for Tennessee is that Banks stays next season, gets a head coaching job. Brent Venables gets fired at Oklahoma, comes to work for his old buddy Josh Heupel at Tennessee. That's the dream scenario. Does it work out that way? I don't know. They got Mike Keith. Maybe they'll get Brent Venables. We'll see. That would be great. If Banks leaves now, man, that blows that entire plan up because then you've got to figure out what you're planning for 2025. I don't think you want to go outside and hire like a whole new coaching staff. You don't want to risk losing Rodney Gardner. You don't want to lose, I don't know, Willie Martinez, I guess. I mean, they say he's probably coming back and not going to retire. Do you promote William Inge to defensive coordinator? He has some experience there, but it's not like his resume is dotted with these elite defenses that he's trotted out on the field in the SEC or anything. It'd be a tough spot for Heupel if Banks leaves. And I'm not saying that he couldn't get it right or that it would be disastrous for Tennessee. I'm just saying it's an obstacle that you've got to get right. It's a hire that you've got to get right, and you don't want to Bob Shoop it and hire the wrong person and just, taint the whole season because of it.
It would, in my opinion, be bad if Banks left at this point. That would be putting you in a little bit of a lurch, and I think you hang on to him, see what happens after next year for everybody. Man, how crushing would that be for Oklahoma fans if they stink bad enough for them to have to fire Brent Venables, they don't hire Heupel, and then because first of all, if Venables gets fired next year, he definitely lost to Tennessee because they got to come to Neyland Stadium next year.
Yeah.
So
I think it could have happened this year if they had not beat Alabama. As great as it was to see them lose to beat Alabama, that's probably what kept Venables from really getting the boot because Oklahoma's not going to put up with those losing seasons and those rough 6-6 whatever seasons for long. If that would have happened, I think this situation would have played out a lot differently with Banks. I think you would have heard Banks would already be at Clemson or Penn State or somewhere.
Yes, that is Heupel's homeboy in Brent Venables, and if he didn't leave to go to Oklahoma, and then you also get Venables after beating them 2 years in a row, that'd be pretty stinking brutal for Oklahoma. But hey, we'll see. And if Banks leaves, obviously we're going to talk a ton about it because
isn't that a weird move for Tom Allen, by the way, to leave Penn State and go to Clemson? Maybe he just didn't gel with James Franklin. I mean, that could definitely be possible. There's a lot of people don't gel with that guy, but that's an odd move.
Especially after such a good year, and Clemson's kind of on the decline with Dabo. That does feel like I didn't like my boss kind of a move.
Maybe.
For sure. I guess the final thing before we hit basketball on the way out the door, we did forget to mention, I meant to mention this earlier, that offensive lineman from USC, Emmanuel Pregnon, however you say that last name, down to Tennessee, Texas, Oregon last time I saw, and leaning Tennessee. Have you seen there was some today? No. Am I wrong on that one?
I don't know. I mean, I've seen Oregon connected.
Oregon
a lot, but then there's like, he wants to play in the SEC. Texas. I don't know. To me, it's a toss-up. I mean, I think Tennessee could get him, but I'm not like, they're the favorite. They're definitely getting this guy. Yeah, it could. These things change so fast too. Like the Josh Thompson guy from Northwestern he's going to Tennessee. And all of a sudden he's in Baton Rouge, and there's NIL, and there's all kinds of other promises made. I don't know. There's just a lot that can happen in these transfer deals that change so quick. You have no time to build a relationship with the coaching staff over a couple of weeks. So this is almost purely transactional. It's what do you have to offer me? Where am I going to play? How much am I going to get paid? That's about it. That's about all you have to go off of. And any of those factors can change super quick. So that's the reason that the predictions on this stuff can change so quickly and be wrong at times. And until they show up on campus, like Lance heard last year, you just really don't know.
We'll see soon enough. A decision is coming soon, according to Pete Nakos. So there you go. Well, who knows what that means? There's something behind a paywall there that I'm not going to pay to look at. So go check that out if you're a Nakos fan. So let's talk about Tennessee basketball now to finish up, because they got destroyed by Florida But then they go on the road to Texas and grab what is, in my opinion, a very, very nice, gutsy win. So where does that leave us? We'll talk about it right after I tell you about Farm Bureau Health Plans. Farm Bureau Health Plans have been serving Tennesseans for over 75 years. Much has changed in Tennessee over the years, but much has stayed the same. Farm Bureau Health Plans has always valued personal relationships, especially when it comes to good health and good service. Plan on Farm Bureau Health Plans for health, dental, and vision. For better coverage, better rates, and better service, go to fbhp.com/ATOZ or walk into one of their 200 plus locations across the state of Tennessee. That is fbhp.com/ATOZ. Farm Bureau Health Plans. Thanks to them. Now to a little basketball. Tennessee is no longer number 1. They dropped all the way down to number 6. A little bit of an overreaction, but it did feel like the AP voters already kind of wanted to do that. They were already like, oh, Auburn's really good. I think Duke is better than Tennessee. Oh, Alabama's better than Tennessee. All this chatter. But here's the thing. Tennessee has only lost once, and they just went on the road and won a really tough game against Texas, and you can't take any of that away from them. Now, with that said, their one loss was at Florida, which is not surprising. Tennessee's won at Florida like once in the last 10 years. But they didn't just lose. They got destroyed, like just drug up and down the floor by Florida. It was very, very ugly. And like I said, where exactly does this leave us? I don't know what you're thinking to this point, Zach.
Yeah, I tweeted it that night. I didn't really have a strong reaction to it. I mean, a loss is kind of a loss, especially when they're on the road, even if it's by that many points. They're still a good team. They're going to put it behind them. They're still going to keep competing and see where the season ends up. But that was just such a weird game. I've never seen a shooting night that bad. I mean, I really don't think I have. I don't remember what the final stats are, but I remember at one point they were 7 of 45 from the floor, and I was like, I think I could go out there and take 45 like semi-contested shots, and like at least 5 of them would go in. Right? I mean, I was never a D1 athlete or anywhere close to it. I mean, it was just you can't even like try to shoot that bad, and it happened. It was just one of those nights. Like anybody that's played basketball as a team, you've had those nights before where it's just unexplainable. And the longer it goes on, the more frustrating you get. You start throwing up shots, rushing shots. It snowballs so quickly. There's really just no way to recover from it. So it was just one of those nights where you're on the road. It's a weird environment already. You don't play well down there. Maybe it's in your head a little bit. Just get out of there and get back home. And then to bounce back though on the road in a game that can be, even though Barnes has been back to Texas a bunch now since he, well, not a bunch, but quite a few times since he's left. It's still an emotional game, I think, just given his history there. I mean, he's there for almost 2 decades, and to a tight game too. I mean, it wasn't, you had to fight for that game and battle, and to come out on top and another night where Lanier, wasn't at his best. And again, I mean, Dalton Connect had everybody's like, he's not Dalton Connect. He's clearly not Dalton Connect. I mean, obviously he's not Dalton Connect. We said that early in the year. Dalton Connect had a couple of games last year too that weren't that great, where he just couldn't hit a shot. I mean, there was a couple of those sprinkled in at times last season. Like, they do happen, even for transcendent players who are really good players that can go on to the next level. I'm not freaking out that Chaz Lanier's had a couple of off games. I think he'll bounce back and be just fine.
He was good against Arkansas, and I saw some people saying, "Oh, Chaz Lanier can't play in the SEC." Or that. Stop it. Stop. I mean, he went to Illinois, had a huge game. In one of his 3 SEC games so far, had a good game. Well, a huge game, had a good game. It's just like you said, that Florida game is a total anomaly, and for some reason, Barnes has been good for like 1 or 2 of those every single season. And thankfully in basketball, it's not like when Heupel has a game like that. In football, it doesn't send you flying straight off the rails. Just like last year, it was UNC. They went to North Carolina, a team that ultimately they were probably better than last year. And you just got your doors blown off because it's just off night, whatever happened. So yeah, I don't put much stock in that, and then to go and respond with that win at Texas, especially with the current condition of the roster. This is the primary thing that scares me with this team. JP Estrella out for the season. Cam Carr inexplicably transfers, and your depth is just not there. You really needed Estrella. You just really could not afford to have that injury happen. He wasn't a star who was carrying you, but he was an incredibly important depth piece. Now he's gone. And so you have Cade Phillips, but Cade Phillips is hurt now. And he's having to play hurt, and he just did not look right out there. He was trying. He was given it 110% out there, but the guy, you can only do what you can do when you have an injury. And it just, his shoulder was clearly hurting. And for them to go out there with that lack of depth and to gut that out, because the truth is, what that really shows is that your starting 5 guys are among the best in America. Like that, you are right up there with your top line guys. But it's the thing that's going to carry you through the NCAA tournament is the depth after that. I mean, you have to get Cade Phillips back, and you have to get bench production. And they did in this game. Let's say they did get bench production in this game. But down low, I mean, it is Felix Akpara and then just hopes and prayers at the moment. I mean, it is like Cade Phillips is a good player, plays with a lot of energy, and he plays really, really hard. But being injured, I mean, he couldn't do it. And so that concerns me long term with this team, because really he needs to not be playing, and he's having to play. So that's just extending the length of his recovery. But you went out there and you gutted out that win. And how you gutted that out is, to me, a guy that I hope they make a key, like, sort of secret X factor, Darlin Stone-Dubar. The greatest name in college basketball at the moment. Darlin Stone-Dubar went out and played his butt off and made a clutch 3, had a huge putback dunk. He could work on his defense a little bit, but still, and that's why he doesn't play as much, is because he needs to work on his defense. And I mean, that just doesn't fly on a Barnes team. But let this guy be a guy, and let him go out there and do what he did for you. Because that, like, Rick Barnes in that moment, like you were touching on, I mean, going back to Texas, where it meant so much to him, and he was there for so long, and they actually showed him the door. Like, Darlin Stone-Dubar saved your butt completely. Barnes should be giving that kid a hug in the tunnel after the game, and then going like, "Thank you, buddy. Thanks so much for doing that for me," because he just came through huge in that moment. And that is the thing that you need in this team, where you're missing depth pieces, is a secret guy that can come in and be an X factor, because that's so huge. Because you're getting better production out of Gainey than I think you thought you were probably going to get. Lanier's awesome. Akpara's good, except he can't score the basketball very well. I think Igor Milicic, really solid. If he can get the 3 ball going, I think he's really awesome. The pieces are there, but you just need that extra to be that elite team, to be right there with your Auburns. Now, Auburn lost Janai Broom over the weekend. Apparently only a sprain somehow. I think they got very lucky there. I mean, that's a kid who was on his way to a Wooden Award. It may still be, but I think you're looking at a little bit of a lengthy recovery there for him. Might be back by the time they play Tennessee. What? 3 weeks? Month? Something like that. Tennessee has to go to Auburn, but they are not the same team without it. They almost lost to South Carolina. South Carolina is abysmal. So, I'm kind of rambling on, but the potential is there for Tennessee to be great, but they're struggling with depth right now.
Yeah, they're going to lose more games than this. They're not going to finish the regular season with 1 loss, and that's fine. I mean, you can go compete for a national championship and be. I mean, we've seen 5, 6, 7, 8 lost teams, make it to the Final Four and to the finals. It's not the end of the world. You want to put yourself in a good position so you don't have to go play a tougher road in the tournament. You want to be a 2 seed, a 1 seed if possible, maybe a 3, whatever. If you're in that range, you got a shot, and get right. Play your best basketball then in March and April. We say this every single year. That's what matters. And Tennessee's going to be in position to do that. I mean, you got to take care of business, but a couple of losses, not the end of the world. They're going to lose more games. It's going to happen. Everyone is. I mean, the parity is in college basketball There's always been some, but there's more parity in the sport now, just like there is in college football because of the portal,
Crazy.
because of NIL. It's just the reality. It's getting more and more like the NBA where it's not, this team went 35-2 this season on their way to a national championship or something crazy like that. You see fewer and fewer of those seasons. The losses are becoming a little more normal. So it's going to happen. It's okay. You just can't, go on a streak where you start struggling and losing 4 or 5 in a row or something like that.
Yeah, can't have the wheels fly off, and I don't think they will. As long
No.
as everybody can, if everybody can stay healthy from here, and Kate Phillips can get back. I mean, it's a very solid roster, but that was a gutsy. Just this team's gritty, and I think it radiates off of Zakai Ziegler. I mean, he's obviously the longest tenured guy on this team, and he just has that kind of New York mentality where he's from. And they're super, super tough. And he came up huge, just like Dubar in that game. Some really clutch shots that he made. And you outlasted. I mean, Kyle brings up in the comments here. He said Trey Johnson from Texas couldn't miss a shot. And you outlasted. Trey Johnson's going to play in the NBA. I mean, he's probably a lottery pick. I haven't looked at mock drafts, but I know he's right there. And he had a crazy game, and you outlasted him with a little bit, I don't want to say a hodgepodge, right? You have a really good roster, obviously, with Tennessee. It's not a hodgepodge, but a roster that genuinely is probably pretty equally talented to Texas. And Texas is poorly coached, and you're well coached with Rick Barnes. And this is how you end up. And you have really great senior leadership on this team from Zakai Ziegler. And yeah, so it comes together with the product that you have, and you win a game at Texas. So just keep it going. You have what will be probably the easiest 3-game stretch of your SEC season coming up. It's what, Georgia, Vandy, and Mississippi State. Only Vandy's on the road out of those 3. And let's say that's not going to be easy because Georgia just beat Kentucky. they just beat Kentucky, and then they beat somebody else. They had another two top 25 wins in a row. So now they were both in Athens. But, I expect 3-0 out of those. I'll put it that way. And if you don't go 3-0, I think it's your own. You shot yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
For this stretch. Vandy, they've had a fun start to the season, but they're not, I don't think, they're going to be a bubble team at best. Georgia, maybe top 25. Mississippi State, probably a tournament team. But you have them at home. You have Georgia at home. No excuses. So anything else, Zach, for the folks at home before we bounce out of here?
I think that'll do it for this week. We'll see how this transpires this week, if Tennessee gets that USC offensive lineman or not. I'm sure that'll be the talking point next Monday. And then, of course, who knows with Tennessee? You just never know what might come up.
Truly. Don't invite it in.
No.
Yeah. And I'm going to go listen to some clips of Mike Keith radio calls. That's going to be my night. Naturally, that's most nights, frankly. No, Charlie Burris, Zach Reagan, thanks to everybody for watching, commenting, hanging out. As always, it means the world, and it's so much fun doing this with y'all every single week. Seriously, thank you for tuning in. I mean, you're here. You know where to find us. All over social media, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, blah, blah, blah. Yep. Go there and find us, and we will talk to y'all next week.
See you guys later.